Today, I am thrilled to introduce a remarkable guest, Will Polston. Will, you are an internationally recognized business strategist, performance coach, and best-selling author of North Star Thinking, Master Your Mindset, and Live a Life You Love. With your approach that combines multiple disciplines, you offer people a unique insight into their behavior, providing strategies that transform their lives. Your North Star in life is to empower people to master their mindset, transform their excuses into results, and live a life they love to benefit themselves, their family, friends, community, society, humanity, and the universe. Well, my friend, what a pleasure and a privilege it is to speak with you today on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be back.
It's amazing. It's actually the fifth time that you and me meet in a podcast, which I don't know about you, but for me it is a record. I haven't done this with anyone else before.
Yeah, I think it would be the case for me as well. Yeah, when you reminded me of those episodes, the very first episode we did with you and Paul way back when, and that was in person. I remember that. So yeah, really good to
Yeah.
be back a few years on.
Yeah, that was 2018. Yes, indeed. And, uh, today I want to explore with you the concept of North Star thinking, which is your book, the topic of your book that you very recently launched. And I'm very excited about this. Before we dive right into that, we are recording this at the end of 2023, and I wanted to ask you, apart from the book, which is obviously a very big, monumental achievement, what's another breakthrough or light bulb that you had during this year?
Oh, good question. I think for me personally, one of the things that has really had an impact this year is me taking my health that little bit more seriously. I think that over the last couple of years, I've just ticked over my health to a point where ticking over is probably the worst that it's ever been. I used to do a lot of exercise, and that exercise has kind of waned down and down and down. And sort of by my own standards, it's not been good. So I have sort of looked at health from a few different angles in terms of life longevity, in terms of cutting sugar out, and a few other things that
Hmm.
I've been doing to really optimize my energy. And that's something, I don't know whether it's something that I've just done last month, so that's why it's standing out, or it's something that's genuinely been something that I've been working towards, but it's definitely something I'm taking a lot more seriously than I have done in previous years. So that's one that stands out for me.
Hmm. That's great. And what's one immediate benefit that you have gained from that?
Energy in the morning. Yeah, that
Right.
energy in the morning, waking up sort of rather than just wanting to sleep for longer, just knowing that you can get up. And I get up pretty early in the morning anyway, but the energy in the morning and the sustained energy throughout the day, they're the main things.
That's very important, and I appreciate that. And I think people can relate, especially with what you said about the sustained energy throughout the day. It's not easy, or it's not a given anyway. Um, Will, let's go straight into North Star thinking, and first of all, let me share my congratulations on your book, which I
Thank
believe
you.
it's brilliant. I really enjoyed reading it, and I would call it in a way like a methodology, if you want, or a path. A path to mastery, and that I also very well that it's a topic and a value that very deeply resonates. I like the fact that you don't just have guidance in the book, but every chapter has the exercises in the end, which is really what's important. The getting the information, going from the information to the transformation, because you need to do so. I'm starting with this, the congratulations, and let me ask straight away what I had in my mind about as a first question. And the way I understand the concept of North Star thinking is that, or it involves anyway, setting very ambitious lifelong goals that may never be fully attained. So,
Hmm.
can you tell me from your experience and knowledge, how does this approach affect someone's daily life and decision making?
Great question. I think that where the way that it affects people is it removes the feeling of frustration and being unfulfilled that people inevitably go on to feel. So I've referred to it in the book as when then syndrome. So people that only ever set short term goals, and they might be a year or even 3 years from now, they set the goals, they achieve the goals.
Mhm.
Then they set other goals, then they achieve the goals. Then they set other short term goals, then they achieve the goals. And I call that when then syndrome, because when I achieve this, then it'll be okay. When I achieve that, then I'll be all right. When I achieve this, then I'll be complete. And what that leads to is unfulfillment, because once you've done that a few times, you keep raising the bar. Eventually, it's like, what's the point? I'm just constantly on this hamster wheel of never being able to progress. And it's really interesting because I was reading your book, Aggie, and one of the things that you said, that when you kind of set out and embarked on personal development mastery, you were saying that you kind of thought that the mastery is the destination.
Mm.
And what you've come on to realize is that it isn't. And that's the whole concept of North Star thinking, is about having a mission in life that's the equivalent of trying to empty the sea with a spoon. You have a mission in life that's so big that you never achieve it. So then you can detach from the outcome and you can focus on the process, and you can get your fulfillment every day on the process, instead knowing that every single day there's an opportunity for you to be, do, and have more by striving towards this mission that fills your cup up every single day.
I appreciate the answer. Don't you think that motivating yourself towards a goal that is so far away is a bit more difficult or challenging than, motivating yourself in a shorter term goal? And if that's the case, how can one switch their mindset regarding motivation to keep going for that?
Well, the North Star is a part of the process. I mean, you referred to it yourself as a methodology. So
Hmm.
once you've got clear on the North Star, then the really important component that kind of puts the rubber to the road and creates the traction is the North Star trajectory. So once we've got that mission, then yes, we do then reverse engineer and have a 20-year, a 10-year, a 5-year, a 3-year, a 1 year, a 30-day, sorry, 90-day and a 30-day goal that we are working towards. So therefore we have something that we can strive towards, that we can acknowledge that we've achieved, that gives us that feedback of whether we're on track or off track.
That's great. And let me now take it back a little bit because we started talking about North Star thinking. And I believe we did not explain exactly what it is. I mean, I gave my own interpretation of it, but let me take us back then to the conversation and ask you, how do you define North Star thinking? Let me start with that, and then there is another question right at the tip of this one.
Yeah. So North Star thinking is about operating. It's almost like an operating system for life. Your phone's got an operating system, your computer's got an operating system, but it's an operating system for life in a way that enables you to be, do, and have what you would love to have in life, personally, professionally, and financially. That's essentially what it is.
Mhm. Mhm. That's great. And you talk about the book, you talk in your book about creating your North Star. So I want to ask about this particular word, creating.
Hmm.
And once that is clear, how can one go about to do so?
Sure. So the reason I talk about creating is because so many people talk about their purpose in life, right? They say, I
Mhm.
want to find my purpose. I'm going to go travel the world for a year and find my purpose. But I don't believe that anybody finds their purpose. I believe that you create it. And there are ways of speeding up the process. Now, some people kind of stumble on it by chance. But with the appropriate interventions and the appropriate exercises, they could identify what that is sooner. And there's a few different ways that we do that. And that enables people to gain the clarity on what that particular North Star is. And it can evolve over time, of course, but they start out with what that is, they get clarity on it, and then they move forward and they progress towards it, which may refine over time. And in terms of what they then do to be able to make that happen, it comes back to that North Star trajectory process again. So that for me is kind of the piece that connects kind of where you are to where you want to be. That effectively becomes the roadmap.
You mentioned some ways of speeding up the process, and tell me one of those ways.
So I'm going to explain the way that I don't normally talk about, because the way that I always talk about. So I thought, no, I'll say something a bit
I
different. So
like that.
the way that I don't often tell people, or I don't often talk about on podcasts, at least in interviews, is to do um, essentially a graph of your life, talking about your lowest lows and your highest highs. And you essentially, if you imagine a typical bar graph, so you've got sort of life experience, so highs and lows on the sort of y-axis, and on the x-axis you've got time. So from
Mhm.
your earliest childhood memory up until the present day, you were to plot on this graph your highest highs and your lowest lows, and then you identify the correlations. And what you'll typically see is that your lowest lows and your highest highs are correlated, and you look for what was the pain, what was the perception of what was missing in those times. Because another piece that I talk about in the book is values. Values is a very important component, and we can touch on that in a minute. But typically, the thing that you perceive missing most in your life is the thing that you value the most, and that is essentially what it is that we are identifying through this process. Is what are your highest values, and your highest values will be a what's the right word? A reflection of your North Star.
So if I understand what you said correctly, by realizing your values or doing exercise that will reveal your values to you, you will have at the same time come close to understanding your North Star.
Yes,
Hmm.
that's definitely an element of it. I mean, so for example, just to put some context to it, so
Hmm.
my lowest low that I remember sort of emotionally was around 10, 11 years old. And at the time, there's been a few since. But then my mission, my North Star, is essentially to empower people to transform excuses into results and live a life they love. Now that links back. I can see in that moment that was a real tough time, and there's
Hmm.
been a few others since. But at the same time, there is that correlation. So that's something that I go back and look at that. And the reason that when I'm getting people clear on what theirs is, I will maybe use 4 or 5 different ways of uncovering what it is. It's a bit like, I don't know, I was speaking to somebody the other day, and he was telling me that his business is a business that does um, sort of a form of sort of radar imagery for underground buildings. So underground, so they're using sort of the radars and the infrared and everything they're using to be able to create a picture of what's going on underground.
Yeah.
But what they're using is lots and lots and lots of different data points to create that image. And the more data points that they're using, the clearer the image is. And it's the same way. The more different ways that we can identify what the North Star might be, then the clearer and more accurate we are going to be around what that is.
Thank you for that answer, and I will slightly change, but it was still saying the same thing. But there is something you have mentioned in the book, and I picked the phrase you talk about. There is this concept of optimal growth happening on the border between support and challenge, which is a
Yeah.
very intriguing concept. Can you share? So, how can someone harness this delicate balance between this? Because as you know very well, when you are on the challenging side, it's much more difficult to perceive things objectively, or at least that's my experience.
Yeah. So essentially, it's two ways, and one of the things that I've done over the years is always I try and take complex stuff and simplify it. And there's a fantastic quote, which is, if you don't like something, change it, and if you can't change it, change the way you think about it. So the first thing is you change it, right? But if you can't change that thing, then you change the way you think about it, which is all around perspective. So if you perceive that it's a particularly challenging time, but you change your perception so that you see that the very thing that you're going through is actually of value to you and benefiting you, not just now, but in the future, then your energy to deal with that particular challenge completely changes.
Absolutely. And I will repeat that because I really want to reinforce that. And you said that change the thing if you can, and if you can't change the thing, change how you think about it. So yours, in other words, the story that you say about the thing.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and that's what becomes very empowering, because there's a big difference between actuality and reality. So
Mm,
actuality is what's actually happening, and reality is your perception of it. So we can change our reality in any given moment, but just by changing our perception.
our perception is our reality, and that's the more one understands that there is no outside reality, it is internal. The more you come to understand that concept, the more I think you awaken to the truth of life. I think what I just said leads me in in a very smooth way to what I wanted to ask you about next. And it is, you have a chapter about gratitude, the attitude of gratitude. And actually, I have also a chapter in my book. I think it's so important. So in your book, you start by giving a preface that you said a quote unquote crazy idea. You
Mm,
said that you nearly didn't put it in the book. So that alone is very intriguing. So you mention a connection between light, knowledge, and gratitude. So I
mm.
would like you to delve into this relationship and tell me how how gratitude can maybe be a source of inner illumination, as you say.
Yeah. So there's a few things. I mean, the first thing is that I always grew up thinking gratitude was saying thank you.
Hmm.
Saying thank you for things. Somebody buys you a gift, you say thank you. Somebody holds a door open for you, you say thank you.
Yes.
When something's going well in your life, you say thank you. But what I've never done is connected the dots and realized about using the power of gratitude to essentially reframe a situation and take a different perspective. And that for me is only when you're truly grateful. So, a lot of people, they'll talk about things that they're grateful for in their life, whether it's people, experiences, belongings, expectations, privileges, whatever it is, when things are going well. But the true masters of gratitude are those that are able to see the blessing in the challenging times. And I believe that you're only truly grateful when an event in your life that you may have perceived as bad, quote unquote, you if you had the option to go back and change it, you wouldn't. That's when you're truly grateful. That's when you've really seen it for what it is and what it's done for you, and how it shaped you as an individual. So the whole crazy idea was, once upon a time I was just running, and I was out running, and like a lot of people, I have ideas when I'm out running, and this thing just popped into my head of, what if light was knowledge? What if light was knowledge? And what if we are receivers? So the sun is a transmitter and we are receivers. And this knowledge that we can connect with can, as you said, illuminate us. Now, there's a few different angles on this, and like, for example, if you look at sort of some of the ancient texts, the Bible, for example, they say, "Let there be light." And then you think of other contexts where we use light as an analogy. So if somebody's smart, we call them bright. If somebody's not typically very clever, we call them dim. We talk about people that are sharing great information as light workers. And there was all of these examples that I'd never connected the dots with until one day that I was just thinking about this. And my concept was, what if that our purpose in the universe is to essentially be like relays of information. So the sun's transmitting information, we receive the information, then we transmit it out again, a bit like pylons, you see in the countryside. They're just relaying electricity, to each other to keep the electricity going from one place to another. And it kind of just dawned on me one time, and I thought, this is fascinating. And then I started reading about it, and there was a few other analogies that I'd seen. And if you take sort of a quantum light wave, there's peaks and troughs, right? So there's peaks and troughs, and when they meet in the middle, they birth light. And it's the same with positive and negative emotions. If we take sort of the spectrum of things that we deem positive and things that we deem negative, and I think of them as like a wrecking ball. You imagine a wrecking ball swinging from one thing to another. All the people that I've ever met, when they strive for just a positive life, something inevitably happens that brings them back and knocks them back. So you imagine like this big pendulum swinging, whereas gratitude is the balance in the middle. And you imagine if you can visualize the old yin yang sign, where you've got sort of the white and black, and you've got the little black dot in the white side and the white dot in the black side. That is about balance, and we're creating this. And then if you think of that pendulum, the higher you go up the pendulum, eventually you get to the point at the top of the pendulum. So the sort of wrecking ball's swinging down here, but you get to the top, it doesn't move. Well, that for me is like an analogy of the higher level thinking. The higher level thinking we are, we're not being affected by the lower level thinking where you're ricocheting from one side to another. So that's essentially the whole concept of it. Now, I've got no idea if that is the case, but ultimately, every single one of us have thoughts. Our thoughts don't come from our brain. They don't, because you've had thoughts before. You've had thoughts of I'm hungry. You've had thoughts of I don't know if I've got enough money. You've had thoughts of I need the toilet. Exactly the same thoughts that I've had.
Yes.
But there's other thoughts that we've had, and I sort of talk about the distinction between thoughts and thinking. And thoughts for me are things that just pop into our mind, and thinking is the proactive, conscious process that we take, and the meaning essentially that we give to that thought. And that's what creates thinking. And that for me is the part that I just find absolutely fascinating. Now, what I don't talk about in the book, and when I share, well, have you read about Walter Russell? And I said, I've no idea who's Walter Russell. Anyway, I get this book from Walter Russell, and I've actually got a copy of it behind me, actually, somewhere. I say I've got it behind me. I used to have it behind me. I don't know where it's gone, but it's a fascinating book called The Secret of Light. And this book is, I think about, I've just seen it down there, actually. I'll grab it. So I think it's about 150 years old. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Yeah, it doesn't actually say when it was originally created. Originally published in 1974 of this particular version, but I've got a feeling that he lived in sort of the early, and he shares some phenomenal insights to the point where people like Nikola Tesla thought this guy was an absolute genius. And it's and it just goes into it in detail, and it's a fascinating read. And what it did was it applied the science to some of my crazy idea, and it broke it down in a way that actually made me realize maybe this isn't actually a crazy idea, and there's some truth to this. So if you want to sort of read more, then the Secret of Light is definitely worth having a read around.
Thank you. I enjoyed your explanation, and with how you were describing earlier about the pendulum and going further up until the point that there is no movement at all, or that The word, because you were talking about light, the word enlightenment came to my mind as we use that when we reach that apex, shall we
Exactly.
say.
That's another great example. Enlightenment.
Mm.
We're in light. So yeah, there's loads when you think about them.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will bring us back to, there is a quote I picked up from your book, and it's quite early in the book. I will read it to you verbatim as it is. And you say, please have faith that whatever is happening in your life right now, however bad or good you may perceive it to be, is right for you. It's happening for you, not to you. There are no coincidences, only synchronicities.
Mm.
Uh, and there were two things I wanted to ask from you. One, we already touched upon it, and was that shifting our mindset to see the challenging events as happening for us and not to us. So you already shared your thoughts about that, but if you want to add anything more to that, please do.
Yeah, I kind of got sort of little goosebumps when you said that because it is something that in the real challenging times, it was something that I would repeat to myself over and over to give myself some solace, I guess. But the experience in my life is that's absolutely been the case. Like it's not in the way, it's on the way. And when you think like that, then it's a way of thinking that can enable you to feel more empowered and grateful for what's going on. Because it's so
Mm.
easy to slip into victim mode in life and be the victim instead of the victor. But just that mantra of it's not in the way, it's on the way is one that I find extremely powerful. So yeah.
It is indeed very. Um, so you talk about synchronicities in what the passage I just read. So believing in synchronicities suggests a greater connection between our experiences. So, using that as a frame, I want to ask you, what does spirituality mean to you? Because that is, for me, this synchronicity or this connection between our experiences is, for me, the one definition, shall we say, of spirituality. So I wanted to ask about you, and what does that term mean for you?
So what does spirituality mean for me? You mean?
Yes.
Oh, that's a good question. I think for me, spirituality is it's about connection. It's about feeling connected to yourself. It's about feeling connected to the universe, whichever that may be. I'm not religious at all, but for some people it's about connecting to God. People have different obviously there's different religions and people have different viewpoints. I do believe in the universe. I do believe there's some sort of higher power, divine design agenda, something that's going on. So it's having a feeling of connectedness or oneness, as people might say. And I think that those synchronous moments are the opportunities for us to realize from time to time that there are bigger things at play. And there are opportunities to just be nudged and reminded sometimes that that's the
Mhm.
case. And that's where the whole saying, if there are no coincidences, just synchronicities, becomes very powerful.
Do you want to add anything else to that?
I would say that I've done a lot of work with a lot of people, and a lot of people, when we work out what it is that they're working towards,
Mhm.
any goal in life, whatever that goal is, for some people it's businesses, for some people it's relationships, for some people it's boats, cars, houses, whatever it is. Every single one of those goals is set to do one thing and one thing only, and that's for people to feel differently when they've achieved them. And when I ask most people, how do you want to think and how do you want to feel? the answer most people say is happy. But then when I get them to break down what happiness is for them, generally it's words like content, relaxed, calm, at peace. And
Mhm.
I think spirituality and people operating in a spiritual way of life, whatever spirituality means for them, is their method of creating that feeling of calm, content, peace. Yeah.
Thank you for this beautiful answer. Uh, well, it's a really truly fascinating conversation, and I'm saddened to see that our time is reaching to the end. I would like to, before I ask you a couple of quick questions in the end, I would like to ask you, where do you want to direct the listener who is intrigued right now with this? And you were saying earlier that you also have a promotion for the book for the listeners, so please share all this with us.
So one of the things that's really important for me about North Star thinking is to get people to introduce it as a way of life and for
Hmm.
people to be living it. I saw something the other day which was somebody saying that their kind of vision in life was for people to refer to vision statements rather than talk about vision statements, which most people talk about and have heard of in sort of the corporate setting and whatnot, is to rather than talk about vision statements, talk about vivid visions. And I think what I would love for people to do is talk about North Star thinking as a way of being. It's like my life operating system is North Star thinking, and that's kind of how I work and how I live my life, because it encompasses so many things. It encompasses how you're being in life, what you're doing, and ultimately what you're having, all of those three elements. So I think for me, what it is that's really important is that people introduce North Star thinking as a way of life. And for me to be able to do that, when I wrote the book, I wanted it to be a process that created transformation, not, and it wasn't just information. So that's why there's all the exercises, and that's why there's there's an, I think, an 80 odd page PDF download that you can go through as a workbook and actually go through and practically implement this into your life. Because my dream is people come up to me in a year's time or 2 years time or 3 years time and say, Will, I did the exercises 3, 4, 5 years ago, and this is what I said, and this is what I never believed it was possible. Because I have conversations weekly with people
Hmm.
that do this work with me in my workshops, in my events and whatnot, and they say, Will, I couldn't believe it was possible, but now I'm living it as a reality. So I wanted that for more people. So yeah, I would love for people to buy the book, apply it. I do not want it to be a book that just sits on people's bookshelves. I want it to be something they take in their life and they implement it and they take action on it. And then they share the gift with other people. I talk about in the book the ripple effect, which is by you achieving your full potential, it benefits not only you, but your family, your friends, your community, society, humanity, the universe. So that's the ripple effect. So by you doing that, that's the impact that it can have. And then maybe you can then share that on, whether it's you pass the book on or you gift a copy to somebody. So in relation to the competition, what I wanted to do is that if people are listening to this, so if people buy the book by the 31st of January 2024 and they email in to win@willpolston.com, we'll send you another copy of the book that's signed to you personally. So therefore you can then gift your copy of the book to somebody else, and hopefully they can benefit from North Star thinking too. So you're kind of having that ripple effect. So we'll give you a free copy, so that you can gift your copy to somebody else. That can be a gift. But then what it will do is it'll enter you into a competition, and we'll pick a handful of people that can join you and I, Aggie, for dinner. And that will be paid for by me as a way of talking about North Star thinking, all the concepts. So you've got to enter the competition by the 31st of January 2024, and then we'll pick a handful of winners to come and join us at some point in sort of Q1 or Q2 of 2024 to come and join us for dinner.
Sounds incredible. That sounds incredible. That's brilliant. Thank you. Well, I always ask the quick fire questions in the end, but I have asked you my questions before, so I came up with a different one, and that just to start wrapping things up, you know that classic question: if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self, and what advice would you give him? Let me flip it around and say, let's say that the 60-year-old Will from the future, the 60-year-old Will, comes back here and meets you. What advice do you think he would give you?
Oh, great question. I think if the 60-year-old me was to come back and give myself some advice today, I think it would be disciplined and focus on short-term pain for long-term gain,
Mhm.
and not keep focusing on instant gratification.
Wise advice. I think my
Mm,
60-year-old self would certainly say that.
yeah.
Well, I want to thank you very much from my heart for this conversation. I enjoyed it. I believe it was very valuable, and there were some elements there that I'm very happy that we hopefully went a bit deeper than the very surface level. Um, I want to wish you all the very best with your mission, which is so grand. And I'm referring to your North Star with the billion people that you want to inspire. Uh, as a conclusion, I would like to ask for some actionable parting wisdom from you. So, what's one piece of advice or one practice that the listener can start incorporating into their life to, begin their journey towards North Star thinking?
Okay, so I'm gonna just chuck out a few rather than one. So first things first is even if you don't go through the whole North Star thinking process, is document today what it is that you actually want in life. Yeah, get it written down on a piece of paper, on a digital document, and capture what that looks like personally, professionally, financially, and get specific. So no sort of generalizations like I want more of this or less of that. Just get really clear on it. That's the first thing. And then the second thing, really practically, is just read that every week, because that engages your reticular activating system, which is the part of your brain that enables you to focus. And you'll be amazed at what that does in terms of the opportunities that get created when you've constantly got that front of mind, and how practically you start closing that gap down by taking actionable steps, no matter how small, towards it. It's a little bit like pumping water. You start pumping the water, it starts off splattering out a little bit, but the more you do it, eventually you're pumping that water and it just starts free flowing out. So that would be my suggestion to people.
Thank you very much, and I will take that, and I will share that as my parting words. That I will take that also as a personal advice. The reading it every week, because I have my own North Star document, which I have. I've known you for years, and I have worked with you, and you have mentored me. So the thing that I have not been doing so consistently is what you said about reading it every week, which activates the reticular activating system. So thank you for bringing this back into my attention, that it is important to keep reviewing it rather than having it only.
So
Well,
really
thank
quickly before we round up, I want to
you.
put one
Yes.
question back to you.
Okay.
So as you've just said, we've known each other for very years. You understood, you've seen the whole North Star thinking process and methodology evolve over the years. For the benefit of the listener, what's been the one thing that you found most beneficial, that's practical, that they could implement, that you've implemented, that's made a difference in your life?
The actual writing down this document of North Star, my North Star, my ultimate goals in different categories of life, because I have it very detailed as you describe in the book. It really, the clarity is the first thing that comes to mind, because you really know what it is that you want. Otherwise, if it's only a vague idea if you don't write it down and refine it and work on it. So knowing where you want to go is, yeah, I wonder if there are many things that are more important than that. So that's for me the thing that comes to mind. There are so many, Will, but
You said the
the one
same as
that
me,
came
Aggie.
to
You
mind.
can't say the same as me. Well, I
uh,
suppose it reinforces the point,
I
doesn't it?
think
It
it
reinforces
does,
the point.
yes, of its
Yeah.
importance. So, thank you very much, Will. Thank you.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome. Aggie, thank you for having me. And for everybody that's been listening, I hope you found it enjoyable. And yeah, all the best.